Want to do a quick video giving you some helpful hints for exercise 234 where we cover some of the basic cost concepts. So just the setup of the problem is for a month, they give us the selling price per unit of $100. The two fixed costs, they give us that in total, and that includes the selling, general, administrative, and manufacturing overhead. The variable costs, direct labor, direct material, manufacturing overhead, and again, variable element of selling, general administrative, they give that to us in a per unit. And they tell us right now they've been producing 300,000 units. The goal here is to identify these different cost and profit elements on a per unit, not total, per unit basis, both at the original production level of 300,000 units and also the production level of 400,000 units. Now, I'm not going to calculate through all of these, but if you're struggling with this one, I'll just give you a starting point that may help out. I'm going to just cover variable production cost per unit and full absorption costing per unit. And again, the same concepts can be used for the other. For the variable production costs per unit, production costs are going to include direct labor, direct material, and manufacturing overhead. Since we only want the variable portion, we're only going to include direct labor, direct materials, and the variable portion of manufacturing overhead. So that's going to be 16 plus 24 plus 20, which is $60, again, at the original production level of 300,000 units. Now, I want to shift over to 400,000. And again, go back to the concepts of fixed and variable. Variable costs stay the same per unit. So it doesn't matter if we're in the relevant range, our normal range of activity. It doesn't matter if we're producing 300,000, 310,000, 400,000. It's still going to be $60 per unit. Now the total's going to shift because if I wanted total variable production costs, I'd take that $60 per unit and multiply it times the production level, which obviously is changing in this situation. Now I'm going to shift to full absorption cost per unit. We already have a good starting point that we identified the variable related production costs. The only additional thing we need to add on here is fixed manufacturing overhead. But we do need to state it on a per unit basis because here they give it to us in total for $0.2 million. So again, starting point of 300,000 units, $4.2 million divided by 300,000 is $14 per unit. All I have to simply do is add that $14 per unit to the variable production cost of direct labor of 16, direct material of 24, manufacturing overhead of 20, and again, add that $14 per unit for fixed manufacturing overhead is $74. Now at this point you might be thinking, well, this is really easy. I just shift over $74 to the production of 400,000 units, and why did they even give me a separate column? But again, go back to the concepts of fixed and variable. Well, variable does stay the same per unit. So that 16, that 24, and that 20 is going to stay exactly the same. The 14 is going to change because keep in mind, fixed costs change per unit because the total's staying the same, but you're dividing it by a different number of units. So I'm going to have to take this $4.2 million and Xing out the $14 here because I know that's not going to be good at 400,000 units. I'm going to take this $4.2 million and now divide it by the new production level, which is 400,000 units, and it's 1050. So again, I take my direct labor, direct material, and variable manufacturing overhead and add now not $14, but 1050 to it, and I have a different per unit full absorption cost of 7050. Now, if I step back and think about this, this works according to the theory of fixed costs per unit. Again, the total stays the same, 4.2 million. I don't care if it's 300,000 or 400,000, but the per unit moves in the opposite direction of the production level. When it's 300,000 units, it was $14 per unit. When it's 400,000, it's $10.50. And again, if you think about it, I'm dividing it by more units, so obviously each unit's absorbing less, so the per unit is going to go down. Again, not going to work through all the rest of these, but just to give you some helpful hints, when you're looking at E, variable cost per unit, just take that variable production cost per unit and add the last non-production or non-manufacturing oriented variable cost, and that's selling general administrative, the variable portion of $12. When you're looking at H, full cost per unit, start with full absorption costs per unit and add both the variable element of selling general administrative and also the fixed. And again, fixed, you're going to have to divide it by the number of units to get a per unit. The contribution margin per unit is the selling price of $100 minus all variable costs per unit. That's E. That's going to give you contribution margin per unit. And gross margin is again going to be the selling price of $100, but this time minus full absorption cost per unit because we're only using the manufacturing oriented cost or F. Prime cost is direct material and direct labor, and conversion cost is direct labor and manufacturing overhead, both the fixed and variable. Hope that helps get you started for this problem.